Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to my 400 affiliates and millions of listeners around the country, the continent, and the world. I am Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. Adam, would you, aided, of course, by Adam, by Ben, and by Dwayne, I think he's awake. Adam, would you bring up Toto's Africa, please? I need to get, my buddy Mark is on the treadmill, and my buddy Dick is on the treadmill, and I happen to know they're just slow. So this is the best treadmill in America. You're slowing down. You're not walking fast enough when you're outside. You can't go outside in California, but this is the best running song ever. All right, Mark, get this going. Dick, pick up the pace. This is what I used to do inside in the middle of winter in Ann Arbor, inside of the big indoor gym. This was it over and over. This will get you at a good 7 to 7.5 minute pace. Used to run the Hugh Hewitt morning running show long ago when I ran before the show. Now I trundle after the show. This is it. If you're not doing this pace, you're not getting your heart up. Come on, Mark V. Get it going. Dick H. I need the whole country to pick up the pace. And by the way, the pre-market looks like it's going to. It's waiting there for you. The economy is indeed primed. It's going to take a lot to knock America. I told you yesterday it was on our knees at the beginning of the week. Got up on one foot about Wednesday, yesterday, kind of stood up. The market went up 188 points, the NASDAQ 160. And today is going to be a good day. All right, that's enough. Those guys are running fast. Gold is back up to 1,500 above that got knocked down. The 10-year Treasury's up above 112. That's very good news. And today, the big five. The president's team, Mitch McConnell's team, Nancy Pelosi's team, and yes, House Leader McCarthy's team from the minority, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's team from the minority, the big five. They're getting together to say, how big do we have to go? I have a column in the Washington Post yesterday, the second of two I've written on this very subject. And it says, go bigger than you ever thought about going. Whatever it is, double it. Helicopter money for everybody. And I mean big, enormous. The sort of thing that we've never seen before. The sort of thing that makes markets say, wow, we're going to have an inflation problem at the end of this. I really think that this is an unprecedented moment. The meteor is approaching. This did not happen on 9/11. This did not happen on 2008. This did not happen in the dot-com bubble bust. The only thing that is similar is Pearl Harbor, because we had to mobilize to go to war. We did not have to mobilize after 9/11. The professional army was able to do it. We were told to go shopping, which was fine. Now we cannot go shopping. Now we have to go patriotic. Some industries are rocked. The cruise ship industry, sales annually of $46 billion, shut down. The radio industry, got 5,000 employers, little radio stations everywhere in this country. You know, Salem's pretty big. We got 100 stations, but mostly my program is carried on affiliates. I'm doing fine because I got advertisers coming out the ears. I don't even have any vacancies because of my audience being affluent, working professional, educated, homeowners. I got advertised, but a lot of these little stations who carry other kinds of programming, music, or they're dependent upon the local restaurant chain. They're dependent upon the local tire place. They're shuttered. They're going backwards. The restaurant industry is probably the biggest hit. They have 15 million employees. 15 million people work in the restaurant business. Let that sink in. Remember, I get takeout. I'm trying to do my best with takeout, and I spotted yesterday on my walks. I'm doing a walk in the morning, a trundle really, because I run a little bit and I walk and then I run and then I walk and then I run on the weekend. I spotted one that's open, the outdoor patio that's spaced the right way. I'll be eating there. Doing my best to help the restaurant industry out because they've got 15 million employees, $900 billion in projected 2020 revenue. That's not going to happen with 2 to 4 weeks off. The airline industry, I'm going to have a representative on today, $885 billion. They have 582,000 employees. Very few people are flying. So, I mean, there's just 4. Cruise ship, radio, airline, restaurant. Wherever there is injury, there must be help. And wherever there is unemployment, sudden unemployment, the number of claims skyrocketed. It was 200,000 in January. It's going to be 2 million in February. And it's going to be, I think, 20 million in March. The good news, it will all spring back once we suppress the virus, which is why California ordered the lockdown of the state's 40 million people. That is the major story of the day. No, it's not an overreaction. I do not believe that. I see the pushback. You know, it's pretty easy to get someone to say, no, this is too much. No, it's not too much. Suppress, return to normal. Overkill. Now, people can go outside as far as I'm concerned if they're alone and walking fast. You can't catch the virus in the air. Hangs in the air a second or two. Someone sneezes in your direction, cover your face, go home and take a shower, wash your hands all the time. You know the rules. Everyone should know the rules. But yesterday I walked by a shirts and skin game at an outdoor basketball arena. 10 guys playing, 2 guys waiting to get in and sub in.
Which side was winning?
They all were losers. All right. I almost went over there as a grumpy old man. I'm 64. I don't look 64. I feel great. I could beat them all in a 10-mile race. A couple of them had a tire around their waist at the age of 20. I wanted to go over and say, are you guys deaf? Is this a deaf league? And I apologize to my deaf friends who are listening and watching on simulcast. But I want to go over there and sign, are you deaf? You know, they're bumping into each other. They're playing the same basketball game that every 20-something group has ever played. They're yelling at each other and, you know, throwing the hard at each other and calling fouls and charges and all that stuff. And I watch it. I just was agape. Are they just deaf? Go home. Where's my Chris Christie button? Where is my Chris Christie button, Dwayne? You know my button. You know what I'm looking for.
Again, I saw some of these news feeds that I've been watching upstairs of people sitting on the beach in Asbury Park. Get the hell off the beach.
Get the hell off the basketball court. Get the hell out of the gym. Go home. Walk, by all means, but get the hell out. Can we hear that one more time?
To folks again, I saw some of these news feeds that I've been watching upstairs of people sitting on the beach in Asbury Park. Get the hell off the beach.
Okay, now, when you hear good news today about the markets, when you maybe hear more good news that the president talked about the FDA trials on the malarial drugs, which may work and may not. We don't know. And the markets start to rebound. I don't know where Amazon's going to be. That's the only stock I own, so I follow it. It went up $50 yesterday. It's going to start the day $113 ahead of where it was. Could easily get back up into $2,000 a share territory. Amazon and Walmart and Netflix, they're doing great. When you read that stuff, don't believe the economy's in great shape. It's not. When you see that gold is back above 1,500, that is a cue to diversify. That means markets have stabilized. And I want you to remember, Birch Gold is where to go when you want to diversify. They're a sponsor of the program. All you need to do is text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747, and they will teach you how to diversify. They will sell you precious metals direct, or they will help you take that part of your portfolio, which appreciated, probably the bond market, and move it into physical precious metals. The market went down 35% in 30 days. Gold was down 6%. It's rebounding now. It's up from where it was last year. Birch Gold will help you convert a traditional IRA or 401k into a physical IRA in precious metals. That just makes it very stable. You need a part of your portfolio to be stable. And if you want to buy runaway money, gold is it. Text my name, Hugh, 474747, or go to hughgold.com, and then come back. I'll tell you about California on lockdown. California on lockdown, America, but go diversify during the break at hughgold.com. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I am Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio. Thank you so much for listening. I have a great announcement. I like to put the good news in with the bad. Here's the great news. My friends at Hillsdale College sent me an email. Quote, we organized and just began promoting a special 3-week study group for the free, quote, Great American Story online course. Details. 1. Anyone can sign up for free at hillsdale.edu/US history. That's hillsdale.edu/US history. 2. People who sign up will receive a syllabus that will guide them in taking the course over 3 weeks. The course starts on Monday, March the 23rd. The syllabus is attached. Number 3, the college will be moderating 2 private Facebook forums to foster discussion about the course. One for adults and one for, get this, high school students. 4, students will receive emails with exclusive video content, readings, and study guides materials. And then this is fun. 5, high school students who sign up for the course can compete in an essay contest with cash prizes for the best essay. The essay prize is $500, but the value of the course is priceless. Bravo, Hillsdale. Again, sign up adults and high school students, but I'm talking especially to high school students who are, they're going out of their mind. Learn your American history and learn it from Hillsdale. They're the best in the country. Hillsdale.edu/US history. Hillsdale.edu/US history. It starts March 23rd, 3 weeks of it. You'll be back in school by then, and you will know your U.S. history. Oh, my gosh, that is a great bit of news. A great, great, great bit of news. I thank them. In California, as I mentioned, the governor has ordered its 40 million residents to stay home except for essential activities. Because the nation's total of coronavirus cases rose to 14,000, Gavin Newsom, the governor, estimated that 56% of the state's population, maybe 25 million, will be infected over an 8-week period. That's probably true. And I believe, by the way, it's going to be the same across the United States. The key is to flatten the curve so that the hospital system can take it. Many of you will just feel poorly for a while and not even know you had it. The majority of you will not need hospitalization. Some of you have already had it and don't know it. The longer we can flatten this curve out, the more testing sites get up and running, the more people are able to cope with it. Just slow down, stay home, stay isolated as much as you can. The economy will recover because of the vast stimulus which is coming. I mean, it's going to be bigger than big. This is Mitch McConnell's finest hour. He knew it instantly. Said, pass that House bill, fine. Don't worry about it. It's broken. It's not very good. But we'll pass it because we're going to show how we're going to do things. Now the big five are getting together, the president and his team, Leader McConnell, Minority Leader Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, GOP Leader McCarthy. They've all got their ideas. Do them all. Everything. Everything on the table. Throw money at the problem. Throw more money at the problem than you've ever seen. That's what you need to do. But Americans, listen to me, and please listen to me. The weekend's about to start. Hundreds of you have helped me on my Food for the Poor campaign, and I'm grateful to every one of you, but those of you who have helped me in the last 10 days, when we became aware that the coronavirus pandemic would hit the United States and Food for the Poor would be one of the charities that suffered, you stepped up. I so deeply appreciate your helping people in faraway places like the highlands of Guatemala where there is no food. And Food for the Poor doesn't stop. They keep feeding starving children. And look, here's a nutrition center in Guatemala City.
The main focus here is on children within the first 1,000 days. Studies show that not only does malnutrition cause growth disruption, it can also lead to vastly lower IQ scores and increase the likelihood for heart disease, diabetes, kidney damage, and anemia into adulthood.
We need to help even as we struggle at home. Go to HughHewitt.com, find the Feed Starving Children banner at the very top. $320, $27 a month, whatever you can give. Give at that banner. Feed starving children or call 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673, and thank you. Welcome back, America. Sonny Bunch knows now what he didn't know when he was younger, and I want to know what that is about the movie business. Sonny Bunch, of course, with rebellermedia.com, which, actually, if you're going to have everybody staying at home and you just need to find out what movies to go check out rebellermedia.com. Good morning, Sonny.
Hey, you. Yeah, it's a weird time to be running a movie website. It's funny. One of the things we do at rebellermedia.com is we've had a lot of pieces on what people can check out on streaming, and kind of deep dives on individual directors and series and that sort of thing. And I think people will find the website pretty useful. We're actually running a promo right now that people can get access to everything on the site for free for 2 months. So,
oh my gosh, they don't need my own doggone.
Don't need the Hugh code right now unless you want to pay. You can if people want to pay, they are certainly free.
Well, they should. They should help you out because I have a request. Would you? I have one request. Can you give me the order in which I should watch the John Ford canon?
Well, that is a big task. I can't do that right off the top of my head.
What?
But
what do I start with? Stagecoach?
If you're stuck at home and you got nothing but John Ford movies to watch, I would do Stagecoach, and then The Searchers, and then The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
All right, so I'm going to go with those three. Stagecoach.
Those three off the top of my head. Then
Searchers.
maybe Rio Grande and I don't know.
My friend David Allen White, who taught at David Allen White taught the Naval Academy Shakespeare for 25 years, said John Ford is the great American artist, and that people don't recognize that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you can certainly make that argument about John Ford from the perspective of film. Certainly, film in Hollywood's classic era. I think he is appreciated by people who know. I think he is appreciated by students of film and that sort of thing. As with anything else, the public's attention span doesn't really go past about the last 20 years. So nobody under the age of 40 really has any idea about John Ford or John Ford movies, or the idea of kind of Monument Valley as the height of America's dramatic space. But I could see that argument. Sure.
All right. Well, don't waste your quarantine. Listen to Sonny. What is Sonny's guidance about the time that we're all indoor? I mean, Californians are supposed to stay inside. Many of them will have access to Netflix, Amazon Prime. Some won't, but those who do, what should they be doing?
Well, it's a very weird time in the movie industry, as we all know. Very weird time in the movie industry. The movies that were in theaters obviously are not in theaters anymore because there are no theaters anymore, or at least the theaters are all closed. So Hollywood studios have taken an unprecedented step of essentially breaking the theatrical window. Now, like a little bit of background on the movie business, Hugh. The way movies work is you play in a theater for about 90 days. There's a what they call a theatrical exclusive window for 90 days, where those movies that come out in theaters they do not come out on home video before. It depends on which format you're talking about. In terms of own for home on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, it's 90 days. In terms of VOD, it's usually 74 days, something like that, 74 to 80 days. But this has always been a big thing for the theaters, for the big companies like AMC, Regal, etc. The reason that you don't get movies like The Gentleman, the reason you don't get movies like the new Martin Scorsese movie, right, in big theaters is because the big theater chains don't get that 90-day exclusive window. And they've been very, very, very tight about that. They have not made any exceptions for anyone, even the greats like Martin Scorsese. So now you have the studio saying, look, theaters are all closed. We are breaking this theatrical exclusivity window. This Friday, today, you have The Hunt hitting VOD. and you have The Invisible Man hitting VOD. These are both Universal pictures. Universal was the first to kind of break this, to say we're getting rid of the exclusive window. We're going straight to VOD. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing we can do. We're not losing, tens of millions of dollars on these movies just because of the window. We're going for it. And that kind of opened the floodgates. Then you had a bunch of other movies say that they were going to make the jump as well. I believe The Gentleman and Birds of Prey were next. And then I heard the other day that Bloodshot, which came out in theaters this last weekend or 2 weekends ago, was going to be on VOD starting on Tuesday. The Way Back, the Ben Affleck movie, the Ben Affleck basketball alcoholic drama, is going to be on VOD by Friday or Tuesday.
Can I pause there for a moment? You remember things. If theaters never recover, the last movie that Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I will have seen in a theater is the Ben Affleck, The Way Back. The last movie my boys and I took my dad before he died. This is a very sad thing, Sonny. The last movie my dad saw was Charlie's Angels, which my boys always say, poor Baba, we did him wrong.
Yeah, that's rough. That's a bad one. No,
the Ben Affleck movie's that's rough too.
Well, yeah, but I did you not like it, Hugh? I liked it.
Oh, I loved it. It's just so sad.
Yeah,
it's the saddest. It's just this thing that every parent fears, right? I'd be a drunk too if that happened to me.
Yeah, and these movies are hitting VOD. They are hitting at a pretty high price point. It's going to be $20 for a rental for these movies.
I think that's fair. A trip to the theater is $20 for seniors.
Exactly. Look, $20 is 2 tickets. If you're watching with more than 2 people, say if you want to watch the new Trolls movie, which is a family movie, that's the sort of thing where you have to buy 4 tickets for the whole family, right? And then you got to get popcorn and jujubes and whatever, and that all adds up real quick. So $20 is not outrageous, but I do wonder if people are going to balk at that. Now, it's funny, you mentioned the last movie that you saw in theaters. The last movie I saw in theaters was actually the first one to be announced for VOD. It's The Hunt. So I thought we might want to talk about that just for a minute because it is.
Oh yeah, can you hold over the break? By the way,
sure.
Can you hold over the break? Okay, so get started, and I'll break and tell people about Relief Factor, and then we'll finish the review of The Hunt, and then we'll hear from Tarzana Joe.
Sure, sounds good.
So go ahead and tell them. Start now. You have a minute until I go to the break. You have 3 minutes to the break.
So The Hunt. The Hunt is it's been the most controversial most controversial movie that nobody's ever seen. Right? It was the movie that when it was about to come out, there was a big shooting, and critics and some others were like, "Well, I don't know if this is an appropriate movie for this time." And then the president actually kind of subtweeted it weirdly. He was like, "We don't need movies about the elites hunting deplorables. This is what Hollywood thinks about our voters, blah, blah, blah." It's bad. So the movie got pulled from release, and then it got released the week the world ended, which is, it just goes to show that The Hunt is kind of a cursed movie. I have to say, I do think it was one of the bigger self-owns on the right to turn this into an object of cultural hate, because it is a movie that spends most of its running time making a lot of fun of the elites. It is a satire, as they say, but it is very on the nose. It is very much, at one point, a liberal, globalist is hunting a person for sport, and he's got him like kind of pinned down on the ground. And he's like, global warming is real, and then he shoots him. Right? It's all very on the nose and very, very. It's not subtle about what it's doing. But at the same time, you don't see a lot of movies where the liberal elites are unabashedly the bad guys. It's a very interesting movie and a very interesting movie to put out right now. And I'm a little bit sad that it is, kind of lost the chance to do well at the box office, but we live in interesting times.
But it's on VOD. It's on VOD?
It is on VOD today. You should be able to watch it on Amazon, on Apple. Like I said, it's $20 to rent, but that's because it was in theaters just 2 weeks ago.
Now,
So
Sonny, when I come back, I'm going to ask you what is going on in the production side because obviously you can't do shoots. I mean, anyone who's done television, much less movies, knows how many people are involved, and it's going to be very hard to make a movie. So I wonder what the pipeline's going to be like. I'll ask Sonny Bunch when I come back from that. But right now, while Sonny talks to Dwayne, I've got to get my Relief Factor out right here. ReliefFactor.com. See it? There it is. I did 2 walks. I'm doing my self-quarantine is after the show, I'm out for an hour and 15 minutes. I'm listening to Stephen Ambrose, Citizen Soldiers, which makes me quite confident of the country. Really, what we did in World War II is so freaking amazing. I'll try to show you, but there go my Relief Factor pills. Oh, my coffee is hot. I brought a thermos this morning. ReliefFactor.com. I make that 4-mile trundle. Then I come back, do work, prep, then usually watch an episode of Peaky Blinders. Then I go out for another 4-mile trek. That's what I'm trying to do is 8 to 10 miles a day. And guess what? I'm 64 years old. Why am I able to do that? ReliefFactor.com. And because I started at 1 mile and I worked my way up, and that's what you can be doing unless you're in California. I think you're allowed to go out and walk. I think exercise is kind of essential, but you got to do it by yourself. And for that, you need ReliefFactor.com, support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. It's the 4 essential natural supplements ought to be in your diet every single day. ReliefFactor.com. Join the tens of thousands of people who take it like I do every single day. And while you're online ordering The Hunt, like Sonny just recommended, you can also go online and get honorboundcoffee.com delivered straight to your home and know that with every sip of coffee, like this wonderful sip, I slurped unnecessarily so you would hear me slurp it. Honorboundcoffee.com. You will be supporting because every dollar of profit, 100% of profits from Honorbound Coffee go to support military families. And I am helping Pete and Seth Talbot, who started it, identify those charities like the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, the Military YMCA, that really do serve the military family. And not just one branch, all branches. The Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund also runs America's Fund. They serve all the branches. The YMCAs on all the bases serve all the families. Honorboundcoffee.com. I just want to remind you as well, what else do you do when you are home alone? AndrewandTodd.com. Do a mortgage checkup. You have the time. They are working remotely. They will tell you how much you can borrow from your house, at what rates the mortgages are stabilizing now. Be right up to the threshold, ready to go when they say pull the trigger, lock, and appraise. Be ready to refinance, get money out of your house so that you can take advantage of the opportunities from a depressed economy. Be ready to refinance, get cash out if you need it. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. There was Sierra Pacific Mortgage. That's where you go. 888-888-1172 or AndrewandTodd.com. Come right back. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I asked Sonny Bunch of rebellermedia.com to stick around for just a couple extra minutes this morning because a lot of you are staying home and you actually have no idea what VOD means. So, Sonny, what
Video on
should
demand. Video on demand.
video on demand? How should they get it? What do you recommend? What I really wanted to get from you, there's Disney, there's Amazon Prime, there's Netflix. They all cost money. A lot of families can download one, right?
Yeah.
They can afford one. In what order would you download a service?
Well, look, I mean, if you have Amazon Prime already, and something like 50% of U.S. households have Prime in one form or another, you have access to Amazon Prime Video. So, if you already have Amazon Prime, check the website on Amazon and look for their video tab, and you already have the service there, right? And most people have Netflix too, and Netflix is fine. Those two are going to cover most of your bases because the nice thing about Amazon Prime is that it also offers the ability to rent things that aren't streaming for free. So look, you can rent a movie for $2 or $3 if it's not streaming, which is I know it's more money in these hard times, but it also greatly increases the access to movies, whatever, basically anything you want to watch, more or less. It's not absolutely true, but within reason, most of the things you want to watch, you're going to be able to watch on Amazon Prime.
Now, a specific question: people with children at home, they released Frozen 2 early, and I know from my own, Prime demo granddaughter, it may be on continuous loop at my daughter's house. What do you make of the Disney streaming service?
I had Disney Plus for a month or two, and then I stopped after The Mandalorian stopped coming out. After they stopped having new episodes of The Mandalorian, which was the Star Wars show. And the reason I stopped is because there just wasn't that much on there for me, and my kids are still kind of young. They're 1 and 4, so they're not watching a ton of TV as it is. They watch a little bit every once in a while, but we try to keep them away from the screens, So I don't have strong opinions on Disney Plus as a service for the young people, but my understanding is if you do have kids in that 8 to 12 sweet spot, that it is extremely useful.
With that, I want to send everyone again to rebellermedia.com. It is free. How long is it free for?
Yeah, if you sign up, I replied to your tweets. If people want to check it out, but we do have a 2-month trial going on right now. It's free for 2 months. It's only $2 a month after that, so it's not super expensive anyway. But that'll give you access to all of our original content, which we pay people to write, so it's not free, it's not cheap, but. I over the last week I've been writing a bit more. I wrote about Outbreak last night. So Outbreak, you remember the movie Outbreak, Hugh?
Oh yeah, you bet.
Outbreak. So Outbreak was a movie that took place that was set in the mid '90s. It took place kind of amid the first Ebola scare of that time, and it stars Dustin Hoffman and Morgan Freeman and Rene Russo as doctors who are trying to stop an outbreak of an Ebola-like virus in a small California town.
Must watch.
It is, and it is kind of hilarious to watch now too, because here we are, we're living in this time of coronavirus, and everyone says, oh well, it's just kind of a bad flu, it's just kind of a bad cold. Well, what are we doing? And yet at the same time, everyone is kind of going with the flow, right? I mean, we have more or less shut the economy down to a large extent over large swaths of the economy, like, for instance, in the movie business. I mean, you mentioned productions before we went to break there. They're not even making movies right now. They're not even shooting TV shows right now. So there's some stuff that's been stockpiled, but who knows how long that'll last. Anyway, we have this very weird situation where the economy is largely shut down, and we've done it mostly by asking nicely, and people have pretty much gone along with it. I mean, you have the spring breakers who are idiot teenagers, whatever. But people have more or less gone along with it, and the funny thing about watching Outbreak is you have this much more serious disease, frankly, a much much more terrifying and much more serious disease. And, people are like jumping in their trucks and making runs for it against, Apache helicopters and getting blown out of the sky, getting blown off the streets and, riots everywhere. And I'm just like, well, that's not really what's happening. It's almost kind of farcical in a way.
That's good to know, and it's a great contrast. Sonny Bunch, I'm out of time. I want to say thank you, my friend, and rebellermedia.com, free for 2 months. I would subscribe, actually. And you can still get your subscription discount if you use my name, Hugh. But, it's good for free for 2 months. Go get that John Ford list done. I got Stagecoach, Searchers, and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Okay, Sonny Bunch, thank you. When we come back, America, Senator Cory Gardner, the Senate gets serious today. Today is the day they start to legislate. We'll tell you what's going on. Don't miss that. Lots more ahead on today's Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt. I am joined now by United States Senator Cory Gardner. As I told you earlier in the show, today begins the Big Five negotiations between Senate Majority Leader McConnell, the president's team, probably led by Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, Speaker Pelosi, and yes, Kevin McCarthy and Chuck Schumer. Cory Gardner, good morning. Welcome, Senator. How are you feeling? Are you in quarantine?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling fine. I am in quarantine. I met with a Coloradan who apparently was showing symptoms while in my office, and as a result, I got a call from the state health or from a local health department saying I need to quarantine. So here I am, but I feel fine, no symptoms, doing great.
How are you participating in the fashioning of the most important piece of legislation of your entire career?
By being on the phone, being on email, and conference calls and Skype constantly. Yesterday, I found myself charging my cell phone almost the entire day because I was just burning the battery and making sure that we get the right language, the right adjustments for Colorado, and how we are doing to get this country, once this period is over, back on track.
Now, Senator, I'm trusting, because you are a well-informed American, that you've read both of my columns on the stimulus bill in the Washington Post. And if you haven't, you can go just Google Hugh Hewitt in Washington Post and read the last two columns.
Very good, on my list. That's right.
All right, so because I want you to go bigger than big, and I know the leader has. I want it to be double whatever you're planning to do. I think not just cruise ships and airlines, broadcast is getting battered, but I also know the restaurant industry is probably the hardest hit industry, and you know the restaurant industry in Colorado and across the country is staggered.
That's exactly right. In Colorado, we know that 1 out of every 10 jobs is a restaurant job. The hospitality industry, hotels, ski resorts, the little mom and pop shop that rents skis in every community, these are shuttered. This is not something to go lightly. We have to do everything we can to pump the lifeblood back into this economy, because they have done what our health experts have said we needed to do. We have to get this back on track. We cannot survive as a country without an economy. And so when we get this this spread taken care of and back on our feet, we have to make sure it's full charge ahead.
Now, Senator Gardner, I've got good friends in senior positions in the restaurant industry. They tell me that business interruption insurers are arguing that this does not count because it's not a physical disruption of fire or flood or that sort of thing. I believe the Congress can mandate that insurers cover this as business interruption and then rebate to the insurance companies. That would get money out immediately. They can argue later about whether it's covered, but if they know how to do that.
Those are absolutely conversations that are taking place. And, if these companies want to have customers left to buy their insurance policies, they better figure out a way to keep them in business. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. Yesterday's decision on the announcement by the majority leader on the small business interruption plan, a $300 billion pot of funding that would infuse immediately into small businesses, making sure that employees are paid, and then working with the small business to forgive that portion of the loan to get them through this is critically important. But you're right, business interruption insurance is one of those ways that could immediately provide relief, and they better wake up, and that is very much a part of the discussion.
Now, I've also been urging forward appropriation, by which I mean we know we need the B-21, we know we need the Columbia class, we know we need the F-35, we know how much they will cost overall for the entire production run. I would appropriate that total money and give it to Northrop Grumman and give it to Lockheed and give it to whoever's making the Columbia class, I can't remember the name of it, and just say it's under your stewardship. What a signal that would be. I call them thunderclaps. Are there any thunderclaps on the table? Things that we've never seen before that will make the economy realize this is a 2-month problem, and then we will all be back doing what we were doing, especially protecting the country?
I absolutely think there are. What you just identified is something that is important to show. And that's why I think what this bill has been unveiled, there's never been anything like this before. I mean, these are simplified, expedited processes to get real dollars out to real people immediately, not just to help with business, but to make sure that employees are paid, to make sure that workers get dollars on the table. We're cutting through red tape. The announcement yesterday by a new drug having been approved. These are things that are happening that we have to continue to push to make sure we get through this. And not just get through this, but come back roaring, because we're going to need that roar in order to get back to a semblance of where we were.
I don't want you to name any names, Senator, but do any of your colleagues seem not to get this? I saw that 500 employee limit, and I thought to myself, they do not understand. There are restaurant chains that have, 100 locations, and they employ 5,000 people. They're just as badly hurt as the restaurateur who opened last week. That 500 employee limit, that's just dumb. That's just dumb.
We've been arguing back and forth on that limit, on that number, and making that very point. We've also made sure that, okay, so if you do limit it at 500, or say you even limit it at 1,000, you're still going to have businesses that we can't let fall through the cracks because the government has asked them to shut down, basically. Now we have to be there for them to get through this. And so that's why the critical industries portion of funding and other provisions within the bill are there to make up those dollars and to get them back and going. So, we have to make sure that there is a portion of this bill for every sector. We start with the workers, the worker relief, the worker assistance. There are no employees without employers, and so we have to make sure that both of those two together are successful.
Now, Senator, I'm lobbying here. The business that I run, the Nixon Foundation, we only have 40 employees. We're fine. We'll be covered if I have to lay anybody off. I am worried about companies that employ 5 or 7 or 10,000 people who are going to have to lay off significant portions of their workforce because their income is down, and they will not be covered because you guys thought, they'll be fine. They are not fine. Everybody, it's not about the size of the employees. It's about who's lost revenue, whose revenue has been interrupted. That's the metric. And I saw that employee metric, and I thought, boy, they don't have any real business people up there.
And that's where that's where this critical industries funding item, this stabilization fund that is there, is going to come into play. I spent most of my time on the phone yesterday. I spoke to Secretary Mnuchin about that yesterday morning to make sure that is something that can cover restaurants, hotels, and others that don't fit into the small business stabilization fund. So you're exactly right, Hugh. We have to continue that conversation and get it right and make sure that stays through this so that we don't have some kind of, okay, if you're this size, you're going to be fine, but if you're that size, you're screwed.
No, I think I'm pretty fine, but I know the broadcast industry is not full of large companies like iHeart. I know it's got lots of mom and pop. Is broadcast, in your opinion, a critical industry?
Well, look, it's funny because I asked the secretary, I said, is this critical? Is that critical? Is that critical? I don't think there's anything in there that is not critical, if that makes sense. And so they named the fund Critical Industries, but I have yet to find something that's not going to be included in this in some way, shape, or another. So that's exactly right. We have to do this. I mean, the government and our health experts have asked every business to basically stop doing what they were doing. And when that happens, you can't turn around and say, well, I know it was tough, but good luck to you. You can't do that.
But I pause for a moment. Broadcast, or actually I should say advertising revenue-dependent businesses are staggered. They are critical in terms of, the New York Times is fine, Netflix is fine, NBC is fine. Mom and pop radio stations are not fine. Our iHeart is fine, and a little group in Colorado of 4 stations, I'm sure you know who they are, they're not fine. So if we don't broadcast, this country is not free. We need a free and independent broadcast sector.
Well, and how do you get information out to all sectors of our state about what's happening, where to go, listening to the news? I mean, that's the role that broadcasters play. I mean, that is whether it's in Colorado, whether it's a tornado or a wildfire, or whether it's an unknown situation like we're in right now with a virus we can't see or feel or touch. Well, I guess you can, and that's the problem. But that's exactly why we have to make sure these industries are okay.
All right, I'll say one more time, broadcast, and then want to finish with restaurants. I can't stress enough. I looked at the numbers earlier. It's so many people. It's 1 in 10 Americans work in the restaurant business. The 1 in 10. And they're all shuttered. I did my long walk yesterday, did 8 miles yesterday because I'm self-isolating, and they're all shuttered. Unemployment insurance won't do it. They have rental payments to make. Are you aware and cognizant of that?
We are. In fact, I was on the phone yesterday most of the day with restaurateurs and hoteliers in Colorado talking about what would happen to them, the rent payments, how they structure their business. Early on, restaurants, they're a different type of business model in many cases than say, a farm equipment dealership like our family's business. But they have ownership groups and investors. Maybe somebody kicked in $5,000. Maybe John Elway kicked in $100,000. And so things like Small Business Administration credit elsewhere provisions that prohibit restaurants from participating in a normal SBA loan program, you have to wipe out those disqualifications and make sure they're eligible for more. That's why we have to get this right.
Senator Cory Gardner, keep working. I hope you remain healthy. Your family remains healthy. Prayers for you and all concerned. I know you're doing the best for Colorado and the country, and I appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, America. Tarzana Joe is next on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
I'm joined by Tarzana Joe, the poet laureate of the Hugh Hewitt Show, in a season of shock. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Hugh. Yes, we're shocked, but it's only because we have atrial fibrillation, and then we're trying to get it back and bleeding the right way. But we're hanging in there, and I'm sure you are as well. And so that's kind of what the poem is about. The sun was unaware. The ocean, oh so ignorant of what had come to pass. The meteor I spotted took no notice of my lot. I asked the moon to pity me. It said that it would not. The star I'd learned to wish upon had vanished from the sky. There was no sadder figure at that moment, friends, than I. But then I thought a bit of other things I couldn't see. My love for a good woman and the love she has for me. The comforting of friendship and all that friendship means. The people of Ohio and the folks I know from Queens. My faith in his creation and the silly human race, together on our journey to a safer, better place. And so I told the grass and sun, the moon and ocean too, you can't stop me from rhyming, because this is what I do. And if you have something you love, that goes the same for you. That's Untitled by Tarzana Joe.
I like Untitled, Tarzana Joe, in this season of sequestration, individual and collective. Are you writing poems a day?
I think I'm going to finally crack open that notebook and write that play, you know?
Oh, Joe. Well, don't forget your commissions, buddy. Keep the money coming in.
No, that's right. That's right. And there are still people requesting poetry, which gives my my heart a faith in the human spirit.
Of course, you can reach Tarzana Joe at tarzanajoe@reagan.com, tarzanajoe@reagan.com, and all of the poems, including Untitled, are posted at tarzanajoe.com, are they not?
Correct, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. You be well.
Not the best connection with Joe this morning, but that's okay. It's he's in Tarzana, and it's 4:30 in the morning there, so we can excuse that. You know, we can't excuse shutting down our conscience in this time of need. It's not just in the United States; it's across the world. I worry so much about the countries that have nothing. They have no ability to cope. Food for the Poor is helping where they are, and they're in 20 different countries. They're in Haiti. They're in Colombia. They're not in Venezuela. They are taking care of Venezuelans in Colombia, but they're mostly in Guatemala. And boy, you've stepped up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But if you can do $10 today in the season of need, in this Lenten period of sacrifice, please call 855-359-4673. It is an act of mercy. All right, it is an act of mercy. Catholics get that. To go to hughhewitt.com, go to the very top, and hit Feed Starving Children banner. Even if it's $5, but if you can do 50. Acts of mercy right now. If you're a believer like I am, God is watching what you do for the least of those. And you're doing a lot when you help food for the poor. And you do it today, and in the middle of uncertainty, it's the widow's mite. That's biblical that matters a lot. There are many rooms in my mansion. The rooms at the top with the best view are going to the people who help the poor right now when they are stressed themselves. Feed Starving Children banner at the top of hughhewitt.com, or you can call 855-359-HOPE, 855-359-4673. Have you been bending the cruelty curve? Did you listen to Arthur Brooks yesterday? I did. Limited myself to 30 minutes of Twitter yesterday. He's right. Listen to something like Citizen Soldiers by Stephen Ambrose, about the American mobilization effort from 1939 to 1944. It's amazing this country can do anything. It will get back up and stand and start running and walking very soon. And the markets look good, but that's just the beginning. The Senate will get it done. Leader McConnell's finest hour. And then do kind things. Bend the cruelty curve. Flatten the cruelty curve. Flatten the partisan curve. Do good things. Yesterday, Tiny came by and left me a rosary because I don't have one. Left it in California. I've got many in California. I got the Pope's one. I got all the ones that have been blessed by the Pope. They're all in California. So I've been using my fingers. Catholics use the rosary to pray for individual people. I do. And Tiny brought me one. She gets the top floor too. So whatever you are, be kind. I'll be right back. America, don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Huniverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.huniverse.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio inside a Beltway that is scared to death. I was supposed to go up to New York this weekend. I had to cancel that. And I would have been able to go to Redeemer Presbyterian Church and hear Tim Keller preach, hopefully. You never know when he's going to be there, but best preacher in America in my view. And I can't do that. But God is infinitely gracious, and Tim Keller is scheduled to be on my show to talk about his brand new book, On Birth, On Marriage, and On Death, which it goes on sale immediately. It's available on Amazon right now. It's 3 books, actually. And Pastor Keller joins me now. Pastor Keller, this could not be better timed.
Oh, I'm glad you feel that way. Here I am in New York.
Well, I won't hear you preach for a while. I'm sorry I'm going to miss that. But before we go to the books themselves, what is your word about living in a time of fear? Because that's what we're in.
Well, Psalm 11 has got, it's only 7 verses. The first 3 verses express the idea of panic. Verse 3 says, when the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do? That sense that the foundations are, the social order is falling apart, is expressed in that verse. And the very next verse is, God is on his throne. Very next verse. It's very clear. It goes from, the foundations are being destroyed. What can we do? And verse 4 is saying that when you think you're in control of the world, and then the world gets out of your control, you think the world is out of control, but actually it's not. It never was in your control. God is on his heavenly throne. That's a pretty strong statement. I think people who struggle with faith in God would probably not be immediately comforted by that, but I do think it's supposed to be a very comforting passage. It's Psalm 11, verse 3 and 4.
Okay, that's the beginning. Now I want to go to the role of the church. I had Dr. Fauci on Tuesday, and I'm in communication with Archbishop Chaput, the retired archbishop, because I'm one of those funny evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterians who go to Mass on Saturday night when you're allowed to, and you go to the Presbyterian church when you can on Sunday. So I get both sides, 2 banks, 1 river, so I get both sides of the theological chasm. But Dr. Fauci said to both priests and pastors, do not minister to people. You can't go out. Speak to the pastors and the parachurch workers and the priests out there, Dr. Keller. You've been doing this since when? When were you ordained?
1975.
Okay, so it is against your every strand of DNA not to care for people, and you're being told to stay home. What do you do?
Well, there's love. Love just takes different forms. Right now, I've got two sons. They're married and they have children. They're both working full time from home, and yet their children are home with them, and they live in the city here with me. And under all other circumstances, grandparents would say, "Hey, this is great. I can help my children out. I love my grandchildren and all that." My sons and their wives are both loving Kathy and I, who are 70 years old this year. And they are saying, the way we're going to love you and the way you're going to love us is we're actually going to stay away. We're going to get on the phone all the time. We're going to do hangouts. We're going to be seeing each other. But we're not going to let you take care of the kids because that's our way of loving you. And by you not forcing yourself over here on us, that's your way of loving us. So love is doing what's best for the other person, and in fact, putting your own needs, your neighbor's needs, or the person you're loving, their needs ahead of yours, and that means it's just changed around right now. It's not what you would ordinarily think, but in a situation like this, they are loving me, and I am loving them.
The very same thing happened. I had Tony Fauci tell me I could not go see my grandchildren, even though my daughter is alone with them because her husband is deployed. And I could drive a couple hours and she said, and
Exactly.
Dr. Fauci said, you cannot do that. You can't do that. I said,
No.
what?
Yeah.
So that is amazing. It's a reverse of everything. Now, talk to me a little bit, though, about specifically, pastors have this deep need. My friend Dale Huntington in City Church of San Diego, in the hood, church plant, been there for 4 years, started a food pantry in his house. He just feels like he should be taking care. I mean, he's with the Lost and the Least in San Diego, right in the middle of the hood. As are many of your Redeemer plants, right? They're in tough places.
Yeah, many of them, sure. Yep.
And they don't have any assets. What are you telling the people you have mentored for so many decades?
Well, the young, again, we are very fortunate in some ways. We are very fortunate in some ways that even in the hood, even in places where folks don't have a lot of other things, they've got cell phones. As you know, they're out in the middle of Africa where people don't have good drinking water. They've got cell phones, and maybe that's what we call a providential situation in that. There's actually, in many of our churches, the people are actually meeting together. They're touching, you might say, each other through the internet more often. So lots of the churches are reaching out not only to members, so they're seeing each other every day. They're praying every morning together, on Zoom or they're actually seeing each other, or they're on their cell phones. They're praying every day in the morning or at noon. They're actually having more content, more time together, and a whole lot more. For example, last night I did we usually have I do something called Question Christianity, which is actually a forum in which we talk about whether Christianity makes sense, and it's actually a forum for doubters and skeptics. And we usually have 400 people at it, and we went online last night, and what we do is we reach out to people who don't believe, and we had 10,000 people watch it last night, live stream.
Wow.
From my living room. And because people are, they're stuck, they're in their homes, it's a lower bar to go online and watch something than pick up and go over to a church to hear something. There's all sorts of ways of touching people right now, and we just have to find them. And the churches are doing that. Our churches are doing
Dr.
that.
Keller, my suggestion, it's only a suggestion, having been in your church many times on the West Side, it's the best worship I've ever attended, and it's been younger people leading the worship. You could socially space that out. You could have your cellist and your soloist from the Met. I mean, they've got the greatest talent in America in New York City, and I don't know if they're allowed to go out and do this, but if you could do worship daily from Redeemer Press, I'd be watching it every morning. Now I want to talk about these three books, but specifically one. Your books are on birth, on marriage, and on death. We've been giving the On Marriage book to everybody we know. We're using it in our Bible study when I'm in California. On death, sadly, is going to be very relevant in the world. And you've seen the horrific stories already of families that have lost 3 and 4 people, and it's just clustered, and it's going to spike over the next 2 months. And it's going to be, I hope, better after that, but it could be 1918 again. What's the key takeaway from On Death?
Well, the book on death is actually, it's divided. It's partly for people who are facing death themselves, and it's partly for people who are facing the death of a loved one. And all I remember from, you asked me when I was ordained. In 1975, I was ordained in a small town in Virginia, Hopewell, Virginia. And it was one of those places where it was very difficult for me to get people to come to church. But at funerals, the whole town would turn out, of course, because everybody was sort of interconnected in various ways. They went to high school together, etc. And everybody they were paying attention. And so I realized that what I said at a funeral was one of the most important ways to get people to think about the big issues, which ordinarily are too busy to think about. We go from thing to thing to thing, and we're too busy to ask the question, why am I here? What am I really living for? This is a bit of a joke, but I have to say I have spent a fair amount of time with people who are dying. And I want you to know that nobody ever says when they're dying, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. And what it does is death, the point of the book is death concentrates the mind wonderfully. Of course, that's Samuel Johnson. And being in the presence of death actually gets you to change your priorities, makes you think about things you wouldn't have otherwise. And actually, during this whole period of time, death is more on our minds, and I'm hoping that the whole culture will think, what are we really living for? What's really important? And a lot of people will turn toward God.
Yesterday, Arthur Brooks, who I consider to be America's therapist, was on. He's our expert on happiness, and he said, no one should spend more than 30 minutes on Twitter. As a matter of science, it increases isolation and anger, and that people need to be making eye contact and physical touch are the two oxy something or other that gets released from eye contact and physical touch. And if you can't do physical touch, double down on the eye contact. Suggested making a list of some people and just call them every day. Are you doing that?
Yeah. And by the way, there's always a way to capitalize. There's always a way to in every situation say there's some ministry opportunities here we didn't have before. So, for example, I actually mentor for a year a number of men and one woman who are involved in planting a new church in the city. I've been doing this for years. If you're ready to plant a new church in the city, you get a monthly meeting with me, and they come on in, and we talk for an hour and a half. It's always been face to face. Yesterday, we were on a Zoom call, so I was looking at all of them, and they were looking at me, and I was right here, of course. And at one point, my wife called to me, and then suddenly they said, "Wait, we've never met Kathy. You talk about Kathy, your wife, all the time. Can we meet her?" And so I said, "Oh, yeah, all right." And so what happened, I called Kathy in, she sat down, I turned the computer toward her, and they had a conversation, and they've always wanted to meet Kathy, and they never would have, frankly. They had a wonderful time. They never would have because I meet, with them in another place, and they never see her. We talk about her all the time, and they were delighted. And there's a sense in which that reaching out to people, I'm actually talking to more people now than I was before who are really important to me. And therefore, that's what I mean by saying there's always an opportunity you didn't have before when it comes to ministry, even in times of crisis.
Pastor Tim Keller, please tag me in your tweet feed so I know when you're doing both worship and the Doubters series. You'll go from 10,000 to 100,000 when that goes viral. You'll go to 1 million. I actually think you have got the greatest moment ahead of you right now. And so people will order on death, on marriage, and on birth. But They're going to come to that online thing. You're going to be overwhelmed. I hope you have the bandwidth.
Yeah, that's a concern, so we're working on it.
Well, God bless you, Pastor. Well done, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Be well. That reminds me, there's a big mansion for him, too. He gets a top-floor room. And so does Dale Huntington and City Church in San Diego, and so does every other pastor out there who's taking care of people, and priest and nun and religious. And just the people who pray. This is a secular radio show, but yeah, we attract believers. We do. 2 believers, Pete and Seth Talbot. I think that's why ReliefFactor.com is so into this show. They're the same way I am. They're going about their secular lives, but they keep in mind they got a mission. That's why they started HonorBoundCoffee.com, by the way. They're very successful entrepreneurs across the whole line of businesses. ReliefFactor.com works, and so people who have minor aches and pains use it to support the temporary relief of those minor aches and pains. They take it every day like I do, and I remind you about it 3 times a day. But they made a decision with Honor Bound Coffee to go out and serve and put 100% of the profits from that into military family. Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund, which is also America's Fund, which take care of the wounded across all the 4 branches and their families. The YMCA on military bases, Military Y. So please go and subscribe to that. There's a lot you can get done while you're at home. Subscribe to Honor Bound Coffee, get ReliefFactor.com, watch Tim Keller, listen to Hugh Hewitt's podcast. Join the universe, by the way. Get Dwayne's after show. I give you all the morning news, and Dwayne, are you doing the after show? Are you focused on the virus mostly? Or he's away from the mic? Would you wake him up? Wake him up. But the universe, now is the time to join the universe. Because more than ever, you need the after show, 8 p.m. in the East, 5 in the West. Stay tuned. I'll be right back, America, with Nick Calio of the Airlines. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. 2 weeks ago, I flew to Hawaii on a 2/3 full plane. I flew back to California on a half full plane on Sunday and on Friday, and I flew to D.C. on Sunday in a 1/3 full plane. And the airline industry, well, I thought we should talk with the CEO of Airlines for America, Nick Calio, who also happens to be a Browns fan, so he's obviously a sainted individual. You can follow him at Nick Calio on Twitter, at Nick Calio. And you know what, Nick? If free agency was a Super Bowl season, we'd get the Lombardi Cup.
So far, so good.
Yep. The Browns are killing it. They're just killing it. But the airlines are getting killed. So that's my line. The Browns are killing it, and the airlines are getting killed. How bad is it?
It's worse than anyone can imagine. You scoped it out very well with your flights. I've never seen anything like this in my life, Hugh. 3 weeks ago, because of historically low fares, we were flying people in record numbers, 2.5 million people, 58,000 tons of cargo every day. Our load factors, planes were 85 to 100% full regularly. Today, they're 10 to 20%. You see it all the time. If you go out to an airport, it's a ghost town. And our cancellations for the airlines are way up. Our bookings are way down. It was only 10 days ago when J.P. Morgan had its conference that the airlines were considered to have very sound balance sheets, the best of airlines of any country in the world. And in the space of 24 hours to 48 hours, the spiral down was just remarkable, to the point where we're in negative revenue situations now. We've grounded a large part of the fleet because we have to. People are afraid to fly. The government imposed restrictions on flying to certain places, have hurt and have helped fuel that fear. It's all understandable, but the fact of the matter is, this is not like the banking crisis. We didn't cause this. Back then, the banks did. It's not like 9/11 even. It's actually much worse than 9/11. So we have to face the fact that the airlines are either going to have to shut down or get some help along the way if they're going to keep their employees employed, and if they're going to be around and in shape to be part of any recovery that comes out of this really national emergency.
Now, Nick, I know you employ 582,000 people. I talked to a half dozen of them in my 3 airplane flights to the stewards, the hardworking stewards who take care of people on planes. 99% of the time, I'm so happy with these people. You need revenue interruption replacement. That's what the country needs, is revenue interruption replacement, so that you can keep paying people. They want unemployment insurance. It's okay for the Treasury to just flood the industry, every impacted industry, restaurants, airlines, broadcast. I can think of a few others that are dependent on revenue. The revenue is gone away. They need to replace revenue. Are they going to do so in the bill?
Well, we hope so. It remains to be seen. Well, first of all, I do have to say, Hugh, that we are grateful to the President, the Vice President, Secretary Mnuchin and Chow, and so far to the Senate leadership, and we know the House leadership is working on it as well. We told the administration that we needed $58 billion. We had hoped for $25 billion or $29 billion in direct cash infusions as revenue replacement, because that's what it takes to keep people on the line and employed. We don't want to have to furlough our employees. That would help us bridge. And then we asked for another $29 billion in loans. They've decided to go all loans. The administration did, as did the Senate bill, and we're looking at how that's going to translate. The question in many cases is this: what kind of strings get attached to those loans? How accessible are they? How quickly can they be accessed? After 9/11, the government, which I was part of at the time, gave the industry a $5 billion cash infusion and a $10 billion tranche of loan guarantees. Those loan guarantees had so many strings attached that nobody could really access them. They failed. And I think the question here is, do you want to do something big but not go big enough and not do it the right way and risk failure?
And they can't. But let me make a comment and then give you the last minute. They have to open the checkbook, stroke checks for lost revenue. It's easy to prove. You look at January, you write that check for this month, you get it out from the Treasury to the CEO of the company. They will not squander it. They will keep people employed. It's not hard, Nick Calio. Last minute to you.
You are absolutely right. We won't squander it. We are losing $10 to $12 billion a month. That is unsustainable. You've got to have an airline industry come out of this crisis that is not crippled so it can lead the way out of recovery, move commerce around, keep creating jobs, allow other people and other parts of the industry or other parts of the economy to keep creating jobs and fly people around. It's in everyone's interest. So, they need to move and move quickly. We are stressing the urgency of the situation. And Hugh, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Come back, Nick Calio. Revenue replacement for every critical industry. Come back early and often and go Browns. Nick Calio is on Twitter. You ought to follow him. He's the CEO of Airlines for America, and I speak the truth. Revenue replacement, senators, I know you are listening. Not unemployment, not layoff protection, revenue replacement. Keep people on the payroll. It will bounce back more quickly if we do that. Revenue replacement is the gospel. I'll be right back. Hour number 3 coming up. Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt inside the ReliefFactor.com studio inside of the Beltway. That music means it is the last radio hour of the week, and what a week it's been. It's a week of crisis in America. It is reminiscent of 9/11. It is reminiscent of 2008, but it's actually larger, bigger, more systemic, and it tests the constitutional limits to their utmost. I am not joined by Dr. Larry Arnn this week. He has other commitments. But the next best thing, Dean Matthew Spalding, who helms Hillsdale in D.C., the graduate program, everything that they do at the Kirby Center. Dean Spalding, good morning to you.
Good morning, Hugh. How are you?
I am good. I am in self-quarantine. I have no symptoms. I'm asymptomatic, but I'm in quarantine by myself and eating pizza. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm in Arlington and from my home office and doing well and keeping an eye on things. So.
Is everyone at Hillsdale fine? Is Dr. Arnn, Penny, everybody we know and love on this program who have listened for years?
Everybody we know is fine. One of our science professors thought he was sick, and he actually conducted his own test in his lab, and he's fine.
Well, the great news is I got a note from Kyle this morning. You have done an amazing thing at Hillsdale, and I want people to understand. I want to give the website. It is hillsdale.edu/US history, a 3-week course for both. There are 2 tracks, one for adults, one for high school students. The high school students will get a syllabus. They'll get video content, readings. They'll have an essay contest. What a great thing to have done. Hillsdale.edu/US history. This is for a time such as this. Those great video courses exist, Matt Spalding.
Yeah, and they've been there for a while, and we're repurposing them because there are a lot of people at home. We're all homeschoolers now in one sense, and so we wanted to get them out there. That's our purpose. I mean, as this thing hit, we started thinking about obviously this protection of our own students, other students out there that are at home. But every other school was just kind of shutting down and stopping teaching. Well, we actually wanted to include continue our teaching function, to keep these students going, get them through their semesters and keep their educations up. So we turned to our online programs. We have these charter schools. How do we keep those going, too, in terms of their education when they're home? So we just immediately turned to how we can use our online existing videos, how we can harness that to do additional things, and how we can really turn this moment into one that's still also a teaching moment for students and the public generally.
Now, we are going to talk, Dean Spalding and I, about the Constitution, but I want to preface that by playing 4 clips that set up the key concern, which is health. Here is the president yesterday, cut number 4. He is talking about what they're trying to do for the economy.
I also just invoked the Defense Production Act to help facilitate distribution of essential supplies if necessary. We're working with Congress to provide major additional relief to the workers, small businesses, and the hardest hit industries. We want to make sure that everybody is able to continue on so that when we recover, all of these companies and these great businesses, both very, very small and very, very large, are not going to be broken up and you'd have to put them back together. That would take a long time because we really I believe in the V curve. I believe it's going to go when this is defeated, this hidden scourge is defeated. I think we're going to go up very rapidly.
Here is the vice president speaking about the need to move masks out. Cut number 10.
On testing. We want the American people to know once again that testing is available in all 50 states and is becoming increasingly available literally every hour of the day. Because of the public-private partnership that the President initiated several weeks ago with major commercial labs, I'm pleased to receive a report today that tens of thousands of tests are being performed every day. And with the passage of last night's legislations, state and private labs are now required by law to report all coronavirus testing directly to the CDC, which will give the American public and also give our researchers timely and important information.
And here is Dr. Jerome Adams, a Surgeon General on Fox and Friends, cut number 14.
Well, we're anticipating an announcement from the FDA earlier today, and I want to give Steve Hahn and the FDA a shout out. They have done everything possible to lower regulatory barriers, to get testing out there quickly. 5 hours they approved an EUA, an emergency use authorization, last week, and they're really trying to unleash the power of the private industry and of the research field to get therapeutics approved as quickly as possible. And you're going to hear more about these.
And the last, I want one quote from the new Oracle of Delphi is now the Oracle of Fauci, Dr. Anthony Fauci, cut number 18 on with CNN, Anderson Cooper, and Sanjay Gupta last night.
As a matter of fact, that's exactly what we're doing. We're gearing up for a study of both convalescent serum, which is a big word to say, taking the serum from someone who's completely recovered, getting it in a way that you can reinfuse it in somebody else, or getting out the proteins, the gamma globulin, the antibodies from that serum, and use it as a way of both treatment and possibly prophylaxis, but mostly treatment. Very good question. It's one of our top priorities.
So, Matt Spalding, we are living in a time, the only parallel to which I can think is the mobilization after Pearl Harbor, because, or Britain's mobilization in 1940, because at every level, on every vector, people are doing things that were unthinkable a month ago. As a constitutional scholar, what's on your mind?
No, I think that's right, and I think watching this from afar, from my perch here, I think we're seeing something not only that hasn't occurred in a long time, but something quite phenomenal. And your parallel to World War II is very important there, and we can come back to that. Because of the innovations we're seeing, but at a time when we are used to immediately just turning to the federal government to do things in a direct way, we're also seeing something here I think that is amazingly wonderful and extremely American, which is that a lot of the actions, those clips you played, but in general, a lot of the actions the president has taken have fallen into three buckets, if you will. One is early actions to secure the borders, the entry and exit. Secondly, a bucket of using the Stafford Act, the National Emergencies Act, the Defense Production Act, asserting what legislative powers he has. He's not actually asserted some unusual Article 2 power. He's actually using legislative powers he has for emergencies. But what is he doing? He's doing, I think, appropriate things for the executive to do, but he is using his vast powers the way I think we're seeing an example of how federal emergency powers could best be used to allow innovation, to allow the private sector, and to deregulate, to give regulatory relief so that American ingenuity can come up with solutions. And that happening and what we're seeing on a national level happening everywhere. We're seeing federalism in a way that we haven't seen in a while. All of that, I think, from looking at from a broader constitutional point of view, is not only phenomenal, but I would argue that's how American republicanism, how constitutional republicanism is supposed to, on the one hand, control executive power. Remember that we've talked many times historically about the importance to need to control the use of executive power in emergencies, but allow for emergency powers that you truly need. And here we're seeing these innovations that are coming out that I think are the most promising. And it just so happens we're seeing those in the West. This is happening to some extent in England as well with Boris Johnson. They're turning to private sector. Here, the amount of innovations, once this has moved into the West, especially England and the United States, how this is all being brought together, and it's largely because of kind of energy in the executive.
That is, of course, from the Federalist, energy in the executive. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fear that is not unique to my friend Dennis Prager, but is widespread that the authorities claimed in this crisis will reappear in a non-crisis setting. Dennis linked it specifically to climate change under, say, a hypothetical President Biden. Matt Spalding is the one to tell you why you need or need not worry about such things. In the meantime, we're going to talk about those powers he alluded to, the Article 2 powers, which he has not yet used, and the police power at the state level, which the governors are using. A lot of people wonder, how can Gavin Newsom tell everyone to stay home? Matt Spalding is here. The Hillsdale dialogue is underway. Don't go anywhere. Hillsdale.edu, and especially Hillsdale.edu/US history. For you high school students at home, beginning March 24th, everything you need to pass that AP history course is right there. Stay tuned, America.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. The last radio hour of the week is the Hillsdale Dialogue. Normally, we're dealing with Homer or Moses or people that from far ago, long ago, and far away. But today, we're dealing with the here and now, the Constitution in a time of crisis. Dean Matt Spalding helms Hillsdale in D.C., and you can follow him on Twitter at Hillsdale in D.C., and you can follow Hillsdale at Hillsdale, and you go to hillsdale.edu. I would especially encourage you students out there in high school to go to hillsdale.edu/US history. Great course ready for you. Matt, yesterday, California ordered 40 million of its people, that's all of them, to stay home, except for essential activities. By what authority does the governor of California do such a thing?
Well, that's a very good distinction, and you alluded to it earlier. This is an important thing for us to remember, both in terms of what can and can't be done. One of the most important distinctions in the American constitutional system is the difference between the federal constitution and state constitutions. And we'll come back and talk about what a president can and cannot do, because the U.S. Constitution is one of delegated powers. State constitutions, on the other hand, are much broader in their way, and states and governors, by extension, have something which is called the police power, and they have in many ways much more authority to actually order the kinds of things we are all afraid that President Trump is about to do. They can quarantine. They can tell people to stay home. They can close businesses and restaurants and bars. Governors can do those things in a way that the national executive cannot, because they don't have that kind of power. Governors do, which is why in this environment, if we're worried about constitutional liberties, I think we do need to keep an eye on what governors are doing. They have more authority, which also means they have more authority potentially to do things, for instance, to get around the takings clause or violate civil liberties. That's why, if we go back to our James Madison and the original design of the Constitution, one of the things they worried about were state governments, and state governments doing things which violate those liberties. So it is an aspect of our constitutional system that governors have more authority. They can do these things. It's something we need to keep an eye on. Governor Newsom in California has done a lot of executive orders of late, including some that I'm a little more nervous about that have to do with the state taking over property. I think that the key question there is making sure they're limited, they're time bound, and they don't kind of establish a new norm in the future. But they have a lot more authority on the ground, appropriate to the idea of federalism as opposed to the federal executive.
Have you ever have you seen anything yet by any of the states that alarm you, Matt Spalding?
Well, the only thing which I just alluded to a little bit, at least I'm keeping I think we need to keep an eye on, is Governor Newsom in California in his one executive order has essentially set up the circumstances whereby the state of California can commandeer property and private property for dealing with the either quarantined individuals or hospitalization. And so I'm of two minds. On the one hand, if you're fighting a war against a virus like this, again, go back to our World War II analogy here, you need to assert those authorities and do those things. What I'm mostly worried about in these kinds of circumstances is not the use of emergency power. That's why we have it. We do it in a way that is consistent with constitutional government, appropriate checks. There's a legal system. There's a legislative branch looking at the budget. What I'm more worried about is these things become an established rule that is there for all times. It's not.
They need to pay if they're seizing private property. The Constitution guarantees state actors must pay, right?
That's why you have a check back. You can do it, but you got to have a check to bring it back into the constitutional system.
When we come back, we don't focus on the governors. We focus on the president and his Article 2 inherent authority. It's vast. It has not yet been used, but it's vast with Matt Spalding. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. The Hillsdale Dialogue continues. Hillsdale.edu for everything you need during quarantine. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, Dr. Matthew Spalding Helms, Hillsdale in D.C. Follow it on Twitter at Hillsdale in D.C. Hillsdale dialogue underway. All of the dialogues dating back to 2013 are collected at hugh4hillsdale.com for your binge listening pleasure during the quarantine, beginning with Homer and the Old Testament right through the present day. Dean, Matt, I want to talk to you a little bit about Article 2. What powers did the president have in a crisis, and which ones has he and has he not used yet?
So it's an important distinction. The president has, as with each branch, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, the president has Article 2 powers. The thing always to remember is that each branch is vested with its own array of powers. Congress has the legislative power. The courts have the judiciary power. The president has the executive power. Now, there's different aspects of that, and there's a little bit of a nuance here we need to understand. He has vast powers when it comes to a national emergency having to do with, especially foreign policies, war, his war powers. Those inherent Article 2 powers, he has not formally called upon any of those, and I'm not sure under the circumstances he needs to, or at this point will want to. To some extent, you could argue that his inherent Article 2 powers are those that allow him to, for instance, control the borders. That's more obviously a national security question. But there are other aspects of Article 2 that are extremely important. Remember, he has to take care of that the laws are enforced. He has certain domestic responsibilities. And so at the top of the show, I emphasize that so far he's been acting under these various laws passed by Congress. The Defense Production Act was passed during the Truman administration. The National Emergencies Act was passed in the 70s. The Stafford Act was passed, I think, in the early 80s. These are laws that recognize the circumstances where there might be emergencies in domestic within the domestic United States, disasters, or we normally think of, or other things like that. And they actually create the parameters by which the president can use and act in those emergencies, act with energy, but doing so with his authority over the modern regulatory state. This is why so much of it, I think, inherently has to do with regulatory relief, but also gives him a lot of authority to move monies around within the budget, such as the Emergencies Act, and things like that. So I think part of his best use of Article 2 right now is actually not trying to assert some creative war power. I think his best action in Article 2 right now is to use his ability as the executive, as the person who takes care of the laws, to use the flexibility in those laws and the discretion of the executive in a national emergency to provide regulatory relief, do this, do that. The list of things he has done. He's waived interest on student loans. He can direct HUD to suspend eviction foreclosures. He can order the FDA to fast-track drugs that are showing promise. He can direct the Small Business Administration to change its policies. I think those things, a vast array of things, which you can only do through an executive, not through a legislature in times like this, is exactly what he should be doing. And I think that's what we're seeing at the federal level, recognizing then that it's governors who have this other broader power at their local level. So
now you gave me the you gave me the opportunity to segue to a little bit longer clip, but I want to play for you because again, it's the Oracle of Fauci. Dr. Fauci talking about how do you waive regulatory barriers to get stuff you need done. This is about the drugs that might be successful interventions. Cut number 17, Dr. Fauci on CNN last night.
No, so let me put it into perspective for the viewers, and perhaps we'll understand it better. There is a drug, two drugs, they're very similar, chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine. They've been used for decades for malaria as well as for the treatment of certain autoimmune diseases like lupus. It's a very inexpensive drug. It's tried and true. It's been around for a long time. There's been anecdotal, non-proven, anecdotal data that it works. When people give it to someone, it makes them better. But when you have an uncontrolled trial, you can never definitively say that it works. In addition, there's been some in vitro data in the test tube. You put hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine in with the virus, it tends to impede the virus. It's done that with a number of other viruses. What was said today at the press conference, this is an already approved drug. So it could be available, for example, when you use it off-label, which means somebody uses it for a purpose that it wasn't officially approved for. What the president was saying is that we're going to look at all of these drugs and we're going to try to get them available in the context of some sort of a protocol where you just don't distribute drugs willy-nilly. You may make it more accessible than you would have previously, but you do it in the context to at least get some feel for both safety and whether it works. That was the message about the malaria drug, hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine.
I mean, the reason we ask, obviously, Dr. Fauci about this, and it's constantly this balance, I imagine, in your job and everyone's job, this balance between hope and honesty. I mean, it was described, as you know, at the press conference as a game changer. I mean, again, how should the public interpret that sort of thing?
You know, Sanjay, I'm not so sure it was, I mean, I was watching it on TV. I was, around the corner from the conference looking at it on TV. I don't think it was necessarily described as a game changer, but let's make sure people understand what it is. Today, there are no proven safe and effective therapies for the coronavirus. Okay. That doesn't mean that we're not going to do everything we can to make things that have even a hint of efficacy more readily available, so long as you do it in the context of some sort of protocol that would take a look of getting some information about safety and efficacy. But there's no magic drug out there right now.
Okay. So what I want to stress there, Matt Spalding, is we've got to find out if anything is a magic drug. We've got to expedite everything, and the government's got to be honest about where it is in the process. If it looks promising, I think the government is well served by saying it looks promising, and then Anthony Fauci comes along and says, but don't bank on it.
But also, you keep in mind here what we're seeing, which is yet again, we're seeing living proof that bureaucratic centralization, like Medicare for all, is not the best way to go. You've got to allow for flexibility. So right there in that quote, you saw essentially a conversation, even though it was only one person, a conversation with him speaking as a technical expert, a scientist, who's dealing with protocols and the rules and regulations that have been developed on these things, but at the same time recognizing that this ultimately is a political decision about circumstances and a prudential call in immediate terms. That's why you need an executive in order to allow for those types of things to happen. This is an emergency. The other great example here would be getting rid of FDA regulations over the development of ventilators. I mean, Tesla is now talking about using their technology having to do with HVAC in order to quickly develop ventilators. Well, you got to break down the system to allow that to happen so that private sector innovation can run with this. I mean, in England, Boris Johnson is talking to Rolls-Royce and British Motors about trying to develop quickly adequate regulators or ventilators. You've got to.
I know a guy in California who. I know a fellow in California, been in touch with me. His air purifier has been accepted by University of California, Davis. They ordered 20 of them, but it's not certified by the government. All right, so it's not. No one will buy it until it's certified by the government. That's not a great situation, Matt Spalding.
Well, when we go back and look back on this, we'll see the testing question about how quickly you do testing. Well, where does the huge jump in testing come from? It's when you took it out of the hands of government, you reduced you gave them parameters, and you let the private companies like Roche who developed the private testing do it. When you allowed Walmart and CVS and all these private corporations figure out how to quickly gather the information and do drive-through testing, that's the beauty of why the American system works. We're seeing a decentralized Madisonian federalism of over 200 years ago adapt to an immediate circumstance where you've got a energetic executive, you've got governors doing what they're doing, you're deregulating and giving regulatory relief so the private sector can step in. I mean, these are the kind of innovative things that happened in World War II, the development of radar and mulberries, and which were the systems that allowed for the invasion of
Do you know, Matt,
all of
the book that I've been recommending the most for people who are discouraged is Citizen Soldiers by Stephen Ambrose, which is about the American war effort. How did George C. Marshall go from 160,000 standing army in 1939 to 8 million men under arms in 1944? How did they get to Normandy with all the LSTs? How did they take the hedgerows? And what you just referred to reminded me of that book. It's just the most encouraging book. American GIs in the field, farm boys and auto mechanics, figured out how to adapt their tanks to break through the hedgerows. It was amazing.
No, and that's why I have great confidence in the American system. And that's why I think we're seeing who's having problems with this. I mean, God bless them, and we pray for them, but the Italian system and the European systems that have all these things centralized are not doing that well. England and the United States are being innovative. I mean, we're seeing this huge lesson here about bureaucratic centralization as opposed to having an appropriate level of regulations for health and safety, but in emergencies, being able to overcome those in order to bring about innovative solutions.
By the way,
I
Spain...
think the textbooks will look back and see this history.
Spain had 235 deaths overnight, 2,833 cases in one day. Madrid has 7,165 cases. They have basically federalized their response, but they don't have a strong state system. When we come back, we're going to talk about responding to world need and the People's Republic of China's role with Dr. Matt Spalding, Dean of Hillsdale in D.C. Follow him on Twitter at Hillsdale in D.C. Everything available from Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. Hillsdale.edu. You can follow Hillsdale at Hillsdale on Twitter, but hillsdale.edu, and especially hillsdale.edu/US History. 3-week course for adults and high school students adapted to your needs. ReliefFactor.com has adapted the need of people who are walking long ways now, getting their exercise by walking, running, trundling, the in-between pace, which is about 11 minutes, 10 minutes a mile is trundling. Not really running, but it's good for you. Get your heart rate up. But some muscles are going to ache. I did my 8 miles yesterday. I'm a little bit sorer than normal. I usually only do 4, but I'm doing a morning and an afternoon walk just to stay stress-free, get the air, get out there, walk by myself. ReliefFactor.com makes that easy, makes that possible, makes that just so efficacious. ReliefFactor.com, $19.95 gets you started on it. Just go there and sign up. Also, remember, HonorBoundCoffee.com. 100% of the profits go to support military families. You're going to be drinking a lot of coffee at home. Get it from HonorBoundCoffee.com and get right back here for the last segment with Matt Spalding. What's the world doing? We'll tell you about it. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt talking with Dean Matt Spalding of Hillsdale in D.C. He leads the graduate program there, which goes forward, and they'll have a new semester coming up. Go to hillsdale.edu, find the D.C. stuff to find out how to do it, and hillsdale.edu/U.S. History. If you're a high school student, the new class gets underway March 24th. Matt, around the world, there are various countries in crisis. First of all, what powers does the president have to assist them independent of any congressional authority? And secondly, what power does he have vis-a-vis the People's Republic of China, which is responsible for this worldwide catastrophe?
Well, I think that kicks in another set of authorities and powers. He's got the command of the military, which means he can send military around to do things. So he's got a lot more ability to send supplies and help foreign countries. And there are plenty of other laws that exist that he could invoke. There is an International Emergencies Act, which has not been used. So he does have things at his disposal. I think the challenge he has here right now, and you're already alluding to it by bringing up the Chinese question, is, countries, especially like China, are looking around as this is going on in terms of what their options are and how they're going to react in a way that could possibly be more detrimental to the American economy, among other things. So they're thinking about it in terms of their great power status, is how they're going to react to these things. So I think one of his most important things right now would be to be helping our friends and allies as we can, but his primary obligation is to protect his own country, defend his own country, making sure our military is protected around the world in its places, making sure we keep our embassies and our connections with other countries strong, and not allow those to go by the wayside. I mean, I would worry that in circumstances like this, Iran is one country in particular is having a very hard time. Probably, by the way, because they had close connection with China, and there was a lot of back and forth that led to them having the virus. But would an Iran decide to do something if they feel their own regime is threatened? That you could have a military situation in the midst of all this. It's not like everybody are like these Americans where we hunker down and we get our private sector to try to figure out how to solve the problem, and we're all focused on that. The rest of the world is still going along, acting like the world. And in some cases, that means people who are going to take advantage of the situation. So
malevolent actors abound. Malevolent actors abound.
Absolutely.
And in wartime, you're ready for that, right? You're ready for sabotage and cyber attacks, et cetera. But this is a uniquely vulnerable time for America. Do you think the guard is up?
I think it's up. I think this is... it might not be up as it should be. I think more generally, this is a wake up to how the world operates. The degree of the debate back and forth about the president's reference to this as the Wuhan virus, for instance, reminds people about what's going on here. I think you've talked to him a lot, but I talked to Senator Tom Cotton a lot. I mean, there are people thinking about this. We should be worried about the extent to which our pharmaceutical industry is completely dependent upon China for some basic things we might need. This might be an argument for things like tariffs or subsidies to help home industries develop the kinds of things that, from a national security point of view, we would like to have here.
So we have never become so aware of how dependent we are on Chinese manufacturing. That will change, don't you think?
It's got to change. I think we're seeing it change now, and it's going to change more in the future as we get out of this. Absolutely.
The decoupling is the subtext here. It is going to happen. I don't know what it means for the world economy, but it is going to happen. When you have an irresponsible regime, we cannot depend upon that regime.
No, that's right. Both irresponsible and perhaps and likely intentionally taking advantage of situations to threaten our economy, threaten the West, see how we react to things like a global virus, testing our systems, potentially threatening our infrastructure. We've got to be aware of all these things in this world, especially where these kind of vulnerabilities exist. We are a very affluent and in many ways soft country,
And I think this is going to teach a lot of people that we got to be more careful about these things. We can't be ready for every situation. That's why we need a strong executive and a system set up the way we have it set up. But one of their jobs is to be on the lookout for these kinds of things. And the global environment, I think this is evidence of how it operates. And I think you'll see changes on our part about how we act in that world going forward, especially as it relates to China and, by extension, China's relationship with a lot of these countries. I mean, the reason Italy, the reason Iran, some of these other places that we're having hotspots internationally is they have very close relationships with China, and they're going to regret that, I think.
And the world is changing in real time. By the time we do next week's Hillsdale Dialogue, it will be a completely different set of facts, but you can count on it occurring. Matt Spalding, Dean of Hillsdale and D.C., thank you. My best to everyone in Hillsdale. Remember, all of those video courses available at hillsdale.edu for your edification during your quarantine, and especially hillsdale.edu/US history for you high school students and you adults who love history. Hillsdale.edu/US history. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo Dwayne. I'll be back on Monday with all that you need to know, the analysis you must have on the Hugh Hewitt.